Just got to make sure.
And so one thing, and we're live for everyone. I'm here with my friend Larry Levine, and it's interesting because right before we got on, yes, you're here at Litvak, not Litvak, Litvak Leadership. Larry said, "Now you know how to pronounce my last name," and what Larry doesn't know is that I was raised Jewish. And it was later in life that I became a Christian. So I know how to pronounce all the Jewish names because all my friends back from high school are Jewish, and I was in a Jewish fraternity. So of course you're Larry Levine.
Oh,
Who wouldn't you be?
Sean, you just never know, right?
Yes.
I mean, even the simplest names sometimes now are pronounced differently.
Yes.
I had to throw it out there because I just had to, but it's all good.
When I was growing up, I had teachers call me Cian because obviously they'd never seen a Sean Connery movie, in the early 70s.
Yeah.
Don't get me started. So anyways.
Okay. Here's one more thing, Sean. Here's what's interesting. There's not very many ways that you can spell Larry. I'm amazed how many different ways there are to spell Sean. And we won't go down that road because you probably know them all.
Yeah. But how many ways can Larry freeze on the image? Okay, we're waiting for Larry to unfreeze. So while we're waiting for Larry to unfreeze, let's talk about mega coats. Yes, we're still collecting.
I don't know what happened. Sean, I didn't touch anything. I swear, nothing happened. I didn't touch a thing. It's all good.
And it was a great expression on your face too.
Uh-oh.
When you go back to see the video later, you'll love it. All right.
Well, I know my finger wasn't in my nose, so it's all good.
It was not. Okay, so before we start talking to Larry, because I'm very excited for this conversation, want to remind everyone that my mastermind group, Megamind, is still collecting coats for various charities across the United States. If you want to donate coats, find the Megaminder near you. If you want to know where there's a Megaminder near you, send me an email at the email address on the screen. If you're in Southern Indiana or Louisville, Kentucky, just reach out to me. I am happy to come pick up your coats. In this area of the country, we are donating the coats to a homeless organization called Jesus Cares at Exit Zero. All right, enough of donating coats and that. We've been very tremendous with that. So, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is someone that I spoke with several months ago and has become somewhat of a legend in the sales community, I think, at least with the people I run with. The one, the only Larry Levine, author of Selling from the Heart. It's a fantastic book. If you don't have it, you need to go buy it. Just go to Amazon, type it in, and it'll be there. So, Larry, let's begin with talking about authenticity. Before we got on the air, you were talking about how this year really separated the sales professional from the sales representative. Let's go down that road a little bit.
First of all, I just have to go back to one other quick word that you used. Okay. Is it used legendary, which means that I'm kind of old. But
I think it is well known.
No, it's all good. I had to throw that one out there. But we were having a great conversation before you clicked this thing live about authenticity. Yeah. And in my heart, I believe to some degree it's been an overused word. I think to some degree people would even probably agree with me. But I'm a big believer in this, and I'm not bringing PhD level terminology. This isn't a college thesis report on authenticity and things like that. But the way I interpret authenticity is this: I believe it's a lifestyle. It's not a light switch. Okay. I believe we're all authentic human beings. It's how we choose to lead our life. Now let's just think about that for a moment.
Uh-huh.
And here's how my brain works on this. I just didn't wake up today and say, hey, you know what, Sean? I rolled out of bed, I did my morning routine, and I go, you know what? I think I'm going to try to be authentic today. See if it works.
Yeah. You are who you are.
You are who you are, which means we got to uncover who we really are. Because everyone will say, I'm just being me. You get what you get, right? I remember a long time ago in sales, one of my favorite sayings is, hey, you just get what you get. But I meant it. I learned a long time ago that it was too hard to juggle multiple personalities.
Yes.
It's way too hard, right? You find, and I've grown up the sales world my whole entire career. It's too hard to say, hey, you know what? The minute I get up, I'm this nice, loving, caring husband and father and all that. And then I'm going to get dressed, put on business casual clothes, and I'm going to go out in the sales world and be somebody that I'm not.
Hardcore.
And I learned that. What's that?
Hardcore.
Yeah.
Goal-driven, nothing gets in your way.
There's right. I mean, there's still a lot of that. And it's sad because that's unfortunately how a lot of salespeople are portrayed.
Yeah.
And it's one of these things where I said, hey, you know what? It's, and I grew up in one sales channel my whole entire career. I sold copiers my whole life in Los Angeles. Talk about something that's dog eat dog, competitive, commoditized, high turnover. Mm-hmm. I say full of, broken dreams and busted promises and all that. In order for me to stand out in a crowded space like that was highly dysfunctional, I had to do something completely different. And I chose to go down the road of being sincere, bringing my heart to the forefront, bringing the real version of myself, because why not? I always say this stuff's not rocket science. We just in sales, we make too many things rocket science.
So when you talk about being yourself, and isn't it terrible that we have to ask these questions? What if you're an individual that has siloed your life, and in this area, you're like this because of the people you associate with. In this area of life, you're like this, and in this area, you're like this because the people you associate with are so diametrically different. How does someone, dovetail that together when they're comfortable with all the different groups?
I struggled with that for a really long time, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, because I always say, to know thyself is to love thyself. And so many people think they know who they are, but do they really love who they are? Do they really love the person that they really are? And what got me on this whole course is I learned a long time ago that the best way to start my mornings off was to really get in tune with who I was. Okay. I found when my brain worked the best. I found when it was quality alone time, and that was early in the morning. And that's when I'd self-reflect and really get in touch with who I was. The other thing that helped me was coaches and mentors along the way. Right. The next thing that really helped me is I had to start really looking at who I hang out with.
Yes.
And, there's that age-old saying, you are who you hang out with.
Absolutely.
Well, in the very early part of my career, I was hanging out with people who I thought were successful, who I had all these stories that was conjuring up in my head as far as what sales success looked like. And I modeled it after it. And I wasn't leading the life as I thought it was. I was leading a life as I think it was through somebody else's eyes or actions. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes. So what was your epiphany along the way?
I think the epiphany along the way was it was too hard. It was too hard to lead a life that I knew deep down inside my heart wasn't really who I was.
Okay.
I was masking it and I was running from it. And I had to disassociate myself with a lot of people. In fact, it's one of the reasons that I left a company early on in my career. It's because I had to disassociate myself from the sales team.
Okay.
Because I knew after a while, I always say when you lead a lie, when somebody lies, they have to cover up with another lie and another lie and another lie.
And then you got to remember it all.
And then you have to remember all of it. So I just started to figure out, you know what? I just didn't like who I was. Not only didn't I like who I was, my wife didn't like who I was. So I had to make some
never good.
And that's never good. And I had to make some hard choices. Well, they were hard in the beginning, but as it turned out, they were lifelong blessings because who I became was a whole lot better than I used to be.
So
if that makes any sense.
So what do you think was one of the most life-defining choices that you made?
Really doubling down on me. And
what does that mean?
What's that mean is I never really worked on myself. I worked on my career I worked on my sales craft. I never worked on myself. So my life-changing moment was still early on. Is one of the very first mentors that stepped into my life challenged me to start working on myself. Not working on sales related stuff, but working on personal related stuff. Personal related stuff meaning my mind, right? My heart and so forth, what I give back to. And that's why I just led my life that way afterwards, is the more I gave, the more I got back. But the more I learned about myself, the more I was able to give back. The more I learned about myself in what made me happy, the more I was able to give back to my clients. The more that I learned about myself, the more I was able to give back to my community, my wife, my kids, and so forth. It was a complete transformation. I was willing to do it because here's what's interesting is, and people who know me really well, Sean, they know this firsthand.
Okay.
I'm a risk taker to a certain degree. And here's what's interesting. I'm a risk taker in my professional life. I'm not a risk taker in my personal life. This had to do with my professional life. So I was able to take some of those risks. But I'm a scaredy cat when it comes to doing some personal risk taking things.
Really?
Just throwing it out there, I am. But when it comes to the way I grow my career, I know that it starts with me. Okay. So the biggest risk I took early on in my career was doubling down on myself. Plus my wife kicking me in the you-know-what to do it.
Right.
And again, I'm not bringing any PhD level stuff or any doctorate level stuff to this. I mean, I grew up with a dad who was a rocket scientist. So I share this because
no challenges there.
I mean, one of the smartest people I have ever met. But when it came to just the simple things like really uncovering how to work on me, I just tried it. Through a mentor, I just tried it, and pretty soon it started to work, and it just became a routine. And I just have one of these highly addictive personalities when it comes to like my professional life. I'll try something. If it works, I'm a hook, line, and sinker, and I become addicted to it.
And you just do it over.
And I just do it, and it becomes consistent. It becomes repetitive, and I don't even think about it. And now it's just to the point where this is who I am, right? I mean, whether you're watching this, whether you listen to a podcast, whether you hear me speak, whether you see me out in the community, you get what you get with me. This is who I am 24/7, 365 days a year. That's just who I am.
And that is so much easier. What I tell people about myself is that, you know, I call it being an on top of the table kind of guy, because when you look at the top of the table, you see everything. You see what is on the table. George Henderson has a question.
George Henderson,
why is this quote so meaningful to you? Do one thing every day that scares you.
Because I wrote about it not too long ago. So because being uncomfortable, that's how you grow. And I think people are too scared to grow because they're too afraid of what happens if they fail. But I know that a complacent mindset will stunt your growth. And the biggest reason why people aren't willing to grow, at least professionally, is because they're scared to find out what happens if this doesn't happen, as opposed to what happens if I do this and it transforms my whole career.
Well, and it gets back to fear of failure. And I mean, the one thing that I have lived by and that really spawned me into having this live stream starting on September 8th of this year is that fear is false evidence appearing real. You know, it's kind of a trite acronym, but, you know, you fail 100% of the time at things that you don't go out and try.
It's why I'm a big believer in this. The stories in our mind are the stories that we tell. The stories in our mind are the stories that we tell, and then we go out and act those stories. I can't do that because, right? And Lord knows I've played mental gymnastics with the best of them, right? I've scored perfect 10s on mental gymnastics. I got gold medals in that stuff, right? but it doesn't get you anywhere. I want to get back to what George said. If we can we go back there?
Yeah. There we are.
It is I'll tell you what, why is this quote so meaningful? Do one thing that scares you. I'm going to take some. There's some people who know this. There's not a lot of people who know this, but I'm willing to share it because I'm an open book and I've come to grips with it. I'm 56 years old.
Okay.
At 50 years old, I was fired from a high-paying corporate sales job. I was blindsided by it, came out of nowhere, knocked me on my you-know-what. First time ever. It was the spring of 2015. And yeah, I was scared. I was scared to death, right? I was scared. I had to go home and tell my wife I got fired. Now that's scary.
Oh yeah.
But I shortly learned afterwards, after a couple of days of crying, that I had to pick myself up off the ground and I had to figure out what to do next. So talk about being scared. I mean, for forever and a day. I mean, I was never, even when I was a kid, Sean, even at 13, 14 years old, having like under the table jobs, right? When you're youth trying to make a buck or two. Yeah. And even when I turned 16, even through high school and into college, I was never fired from a job. I left on my own free will. But at 50, I found myself in an unfortunate circumstance. I had two choices to make. I can either go back to doing what I knew how to do, which was sell copiers. And that would have been the complacent way out, and I still would have made good money. The other way was doing what I'm doing now. And through my dear wife and my very close friend, Daryl Amy, they kicked me in the right direction, and it was the biggest blessing ever. But it was some scary times for a while. But
sure.
But I doubled down on myself. I doubled down on my message. I doubled down on my believability. And I just approached my, this part of my life. I always said I was forced into entrepreneurship, but I did it because I'm a big believer that words matter and a message matters. And I knew I had a message to get out there.
So you published, and I recall reading it. You in the beginning of your book, you talked about how you wanted to have a book by the time you were 50, and you were just a few years late. So the book is only 2-3 years old.
The book's 2 years and a few months.
Really?
I will tell you this, that from 50 to the first couple years being forced into entrepreneurship was a roller coaster. I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you this right now. All the entrepreneurs out there, they know it. It's like an freaking ticket ride at Disneyland. It's a roller coaster that goes like this. But the biggest turning point in my entrepreneurial career was the day we started the Selling from the Heart podcast.
Okay.
And that was 3.5 years ago. I am telling you, Selling from the Heart I will tell you exactly how this whole movement around this started. It was 3.5 years ago. I'm at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas getting ready to speak at an event. And Daryl was there with me. And we were having breakfast. And I said, "Hey, Daryl, you want to start a podcast?" And he's going, "Come on, what are 2X, copier salespeople going to talk about that anybody will listen to?" And I said, "Well, we'll figure it out." As he's sipping his cup of coffee and he goes, "What are we going to call this podcast? Because that's the determining factor."
Right.
So we're going to call the podcast Selling from the Heart. And he goes, and he spits his coffee out at me, right? And he goes, "Where did you pull this from?" And I go, "Hey, Daryl, you've known me a really long time. You know that I brought sincerity. I brought substance. I was appreciative of my clients. I brought love, care, and respect. That's how I carried myself in a really chaotic sales world. We're going to talk about it." He goes, "Well, okay." If you listen to our first podcast, we'd laugh. Right? We go back and we listen to it and we laugh. But that was the start of Selling from the Heart. And it wasn't until about a year later, Daryl hijacks me in a car, literally, and he drives me from Little Rock, Arkansas to Austin, Texas, and he convinced me to write a book because he knew I wanted to write a book. It was a promise to my wife by that time I was 50, and he knew that. And he goes, "You really got to bring what's in your head to written format." So I helped start the podcast. He convinced me to write the book. And in 3.5 years, we've created Selling from the Heart and turned it into this big worldwide movement.
Oh, it is. And And let me get to the right banner here. Let's talk about this. The Selling from the Heart Challenge. I know I've signed up for it. I know some other folks who have signed up for it. Why don't you talk a little bit about it? Because I got to tell you, I am excited for this sales training that is going to occur the second and third week of January.
Yeah, it was. And thanks, Sean. Daryl and I, it's just, we meet all the time, at least virtually. And we always dream up things, what if we did something, what would it look like? If we attended an event, what would we like that event to look like? If we crafted something into 2021, what would we like to see? And all of a sudden we started just brainstorming. And we go, why don't we come up with a challenge? And why don't we challenge the sales world out there around authenticity? And publicly have them come out and say, this is what selling from the heart means, and so forth. And we just started to brainstorm. And he goes, what happens if we turn this into a 10-day challenge? And I go, this is kind of cool. And he goes, what would happen if we invited some of our friends and influencers to speak at the event? What if we created something that was completely different than everything else that was out there, and we kept it 100% live? And so the challenge starts January 11th. It's an hour. It starts at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's 1 hour a day. Daryl and I are going to coach and teach around authenticity and heart and sincerity. We're going to integrate the inner game with the outer game. And then at the midway point, we're going to bring on speakers who are going to speak around that topic. And we have 13 of our nearest and dearest closest friends.
Sure.
That are joining us for this journey. It's an investment we're making in our community. It's an investment we're making in the Selling from the Heart community that, authenticity is a game changer. It's how we overcome trust in a world that doesn't trust salespeople. But this is a total time for the Selling from the Heart community, everyone who's waving the flag around it, to publicly just share, what does heart mean in a world that lacks heart? And that runs rampant in the sales world. And if we look at what's happened through most of 2020, we can use a little bit of heart. We can sure use a lot of sincerity, and we have to bring business substance to the table to align to the hearts and minds of our clients. If we don't, they just view us as empty suits.
So jump off of that a little bit more, bringing business substance to the heart, what you just said.
When I say bring business substance to the table along with heart, is you got to give a rip. You really got to give a rip about your clients. You got to give a rip about your career. When I say business substance, you got to be able to sit down, whether that be virtual or face-to-face, depending on where you're at. Right? You got to be able to bring education, insight. You have to bring facts. You have to bring things to the table that's going to help your clients do better business. And you have to be able to speak their language, and you have to do that with high levels of business acumen. This is where I see a lot of salespeople struggle with. They have great sales conversations,
right?
But very few have terrific business conversations. And I see people struggling with it time and time and time again, right? I always challenge salespeople. I said, hey, you know what? How do you get equal business stature with Sean? And Sean's a CFO of a company. And they'll look at me and they'll go, what do you mean? I say, how do you get on the right side of the table? You speak their language.
Sure.
Most salespeople speak great sales language. They don't speak great business language. We must speak the language of our clients.
So, one thing that I know that I've done is I've also been in operations, so I'm able to talk from an operational standpoint, which has given me some gravitas when I'm talking to people, because they don't see me as, quote, just a salesperson. So often you see, as a matter of fact, IFMA just did, the International Facility Management Association. They just did a webinar on how to talk to the real people that you're going to buy services from by getting the salespeople out of the way and forcing them to bring the operators in. What do you have to say to that?
Well, it's interesting because I'm going to use a different example, but I understand where you're going with this. You know, I remember having to sell into the IT space. Okay. And I'm the most non-technical person you'll probably ever meet.
Sure.
But here's what was interesting, and people have seen me do this. I said, hey, listen, right, Sean, I'm not the most technically sound person that's out there. You're a lot smarter than me. I got an army of IT people sitting in my office. But I'm here to understand your issues, your challenges, right? I could speak at a high level IT speak. But guess what? I also knew that in the situations I was in, there was operations people, there was IT people, there was facilities people, there were, key users and things like that. Again, it goes back to this. I made it a point to hold myself accountable to learn some of their language so that when I spoke to Sean, who was an operations person, it was in his language, using his lingo, things that he would resonate with. Now, if I switched gears and I spoke to somebody else, I was using their language. But what I did is I was comfortable enough to say, this is what I know, this is what I don't know. And I'd surround myself with a team of people that I can have those conversations with that can help drive the points across. You get what I'm saying?
I get exactly what you're saying.
But see what happens is most salespeople will say, you know what, I know it all. And they're going to fake it, right? And I'd be the first one to say, hey, you know what? I'm not the smartest person out there. But I do understand to me, I'm a big believer we all have a secret sauce. Mm-hmm. Deep down inside, we all have a secret sauce. Now, my secret sauce forever and a day is I love having conversations with people. I love the whole idea of a conversation. I knew that the more comfortable I'd make Sean feel about me, the more comfortable Sean would share things about him. The more comfortable I made Sean feel, the more comfortable he would share things about his company.
Sure.
And the inner workings of his company. And that's just how I approached. That's how I approach sales. That's how I approach things today. When I work with salespeople and sales teams, it's no different. I just forever and a day, it's just what goes through my head. We have over complicated sales. Way over complicated it.
So what do you think is for the person who's like, okay, I agree, it is overcomplicated. What should be the first thing that they should do to uncomplicate it?
Stop paying attention to all the noise that's out there. Stop. I mean, literally, here's another thing. And you're probably going to shoot me for saying this.
No, go ahead.
And maybe your listeners will shoot me as well. Okay. Stop reading sales books.
Well, but then we're going to stop reading your book.
No. Stop reading sales-centric books, my opinion, right?
Okay.
And here's why. There's so many. To me, the best books that have helped me along the way, in fact, the latter part of my sales career, were leadership books, were self-help books, were books around the arts of conversation, the books around the art of communication, those things. I'm not here to discredit sales books, none whatsoever. I got a bookshelf full of them.
Sure.
But the first thing that I would coach young people, even tenured salespeople, stop reading sales books, read leadership, read books about yourself, develop your mind, develop conversation and relationship skill sets.
Well, and you bring that up, and people talk about, and Jeffrey Gitomer, king of sales, but when you go to read his books, I don't see anything salesy there. It's all about personal development, listening, and engaging your customer.
Yeah. I think that, to me, listening is where it all starts. In fact, I'll even go a step farther. It's intentional listening.
Sure.
But even before that, it's about asking really great questions and having that mindset is, I'm here to help you. I'm here to serve you, as opposed to I'm here to make a sale. Yeah. The end result of what we do, those are outcomes, right? You're going to move products, you're going to move services and things like that. But what was really interesting, I was on a team meeting. I ran a virtual team meeting for a group of salespeople. And they were talking about how much business they closed this week and what was their percentage closing. And then they flipped it to me and I went right back to what I heard, closing and all that. And I said, hey, listen, why don't you flip this around and say, instead of closing, this was our percentage of how many new relationships we opened. The number's the number.
People in the room are like, who is this guy?
Yeah, and I said, hey, listen, you can have a 68% closing ratio, whatever that is, right? But how about if we just changed and said, hey, you know what? I had a 68% open. I opened new relationships 68% of the time this week.
Sure.
Doesn't change scoreboard. It's just your mindset. And I think that's the whole thing is, we get so focused on making the sale that we lose track of it's just another individual. And it's all about helping them do better business. And it's all about, to me, it was so funny. I remember the very first podcast I went on. Somebody asked me in one short, concise sentence, define sales. And I said, it's all about the art of the help. And I'll even say it goes one step farther. It's about helping ourselves first. Because if we can't help ourselves, how can we help our customers do better business? Think about that one for a second.
You, my friend, in 31 minutes and 17 seconds, have definitely inspired me. No doubt about it whatsoever. And I know you have inspired our viewers today. So in the moments we have left, because I know you have another meeting you need to get off to, what do you want to tell people to encourage them into 2021?
I would say this. It's two words: double down. Double down on yourself. Double down on a couple other things. And I like to use RE words. I would say this: if you roll into 2021, double down on yourself, re-engage with yourself, re-educate yourself, get reacquainted with yourself. Then take that out, re-engage with your clients, re-educate your clients, get reacquainted with your clients. Really get to know them, dig well below the surface with your clients. I'm a big believer in this for all the salespeople out there that are listening. If you want to grow your business in 2021, it comes right through how well you build, grow, and nurture relationships with your current clients. There's golden nuggets to be mined in your customers' businesses. There's relationships and networks. I would encourage everybody out there, if you want to have a successful 2021, work on yourself and work on the relationships you have with your customers. They will help you. All you got to do is ask for help. I'll leave you with one last thing. If you never ask, you never get. It goes back to that Bible verse, ask not, get not.
Indeed. So everyone, thank you. Larry, thank you for
my pleasure. You're very welcome.
My guest on the show today. Everyone else, great pearls of wisdom today. Share this, watch it again, comment on it, and go to sellingfromtheheart.net/challenge to sign up for the 2-week challenge that Larry has put out there. You will certainly be blessed, and it will start your 2021 on a great note. That's it for Litvak Leadership Live today. We'll be back at our regular time of 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Larry, again, thank you very much.
My pleasure, Sean.
Everyone else, be